Chapter 1 of Metamorphosis, page number 15. One morning, when Grigor Samsa woke up from troubled dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a horrible vermin. He lay on his armor like back, and if he lifted his head a little, he could see his brown belly, slightly domed and divided by arcs into stiff sections. The bedding was hardly able to cover it and seemed ready to slide off any moment. His many legs, pitifully thin compared with the size of the rest of him, waved about helplessly as he looked. What's happened to me? He thought. It wasn't a dream. His room, a proper human room, although a little too small, lay peacefully between its four familiar walls. A collection of textile samples lay spread out on the table. Samsa was a traveling salesman, and above it here hung a picture that he had recently cut out of an illustrated magazine and housed in a nice gilt frame. It showed a lady fitted out with a fur hat and fur bow who sat upright, raising a heavy fur muff that covered the whole of her lower arm towards the viewer. Gregor then turned to look out the window at the dull weather. Drops of rain could be heard hitting the pane, which made him feel quite sad. How about if I sleep a little bit longer and forgot all this nonsense? He thought, but that was something he was unable to do because he was used to sleeping on his right and in his present state couldn't get into that position. However hard to throw himself onto his right, he always rolled back to where he was. He must have tried it 100 times, shut his eyes so that he would not have to look at the fluttering leg, and only stopped when he began to feel a mild, dull pain there that he had never felt before. Oh God, he thought, what a strenuous career it is that I have chosen, traveling day in the day out. Doing business like this takes much more effort than doing your own business at home. And on top of that, here's the cost of traveling, worries about making train connections, bad and irregular food, contact with different people all the time so that you can never get to know anymore or become friendly with them. It can all go to hell. He felt a slight itch up on his belly, pushed himself slowly up on his back toward the headboard so that he could lift his head, better found where the itching was, and saw that it was covered with lots of little white spots which he didn't know what to make of. And when he tried to feel the place with one of his legs, he drew it quickly back because as soon as he touched it, he was overcome by a cold shudder. He slid back into the former position, getting up earlier all the time. He thought it makes up stupid. You have got to get enough sleep. Other traveling salesmen live a life of luxury. For instance, whenever I got back to the guest house during the morning to copy out the contract, these gentlemen are always still sitting there, eating their breakfast. I ought to just try. That with my boss, I had get kicked out on the spot. But who knows, maybe, and that would be the best thing for me. If I didn't have my parents to think about what had have given my notice a long time ago, I have gone up to the boss and told him just what I think. Tell him everything. I would let him know just what I feel. He had fall right off his desk, and it's a funny sort of business to be sitting up there at your desk. talking down at your subordinates from up there, especially when you have go to right of close because the boss is hard of hearing. Well, there is still some hope once I have got the money together to pay off my parents' debt to him. Another 5 or 6 years, I suppose. That's definitely what I'll do. That's when I will make the big change. First of all, I have got to get up. My train leaves at 5. And he looked over the alarm clock ticking on the chest of drawers. God in heaven, he thought. It was 6:30 and the hands were quietly moving forward. It was even later than half past, more like quarter to 7. Had the alarm clock not rung? He could see from the bed that it had been set for 4 o'clock, as it should have been. It certainly may have rung. Yes, but was it possible to quietly sleep through that furniture rattling noise? True, he had not slept peacefully, but probably all the more deeply because of that. What should he do now? The next train went at 7. If he went to catch that, he would have to rush like mad, and the collection of samples will still not packed. And he did not at the feel particularly fresh and lively. And even if he did catch the train, he would not avoid his boss' anger at the office assistant would have been there to see the 5 o'clock train go. He would have put in his report about George's not being there in the long time ago. The office assistant was the boss man, spineless and with no understandings. What about if he reported sick? But that would be extremely strange and suspicious, as in 15 years of service, Kroger had never once yet been ill. His boss would certainly come round with the doctor from the medical insurance company, accuse his parents of having a lazy son, and accept the doctor's recommendation not to make any claim, at the doctor believed that no one was ever ill, but that many were workshy. And what's more, would he have been entirely wrong in this case? Gregor did, in fact, apart from excessive sleepiness, after sleeping for so long, feel completely well and even felt much hungrier than usual. He was still hurried thinkly all this through, unable to decide to get out of the bed when the clock struck quarter to 7. There was a cautious knock at the door near his head. Gregor, somebody called. It was his mother. It's quarter to 7. Didn't you want to go somewhere? What gentle voice. Gregor was shocked when he heard his own voice answering. It could hardly to recognize as the voice he had before. As he as if from deep inside him there was a painful and uncontrollable quaking mixed in with it. The words would be made out at first, but then there was a sort of echo which made him unclear, leaving the hearer unsure whether he had heard properly or not. Gregor had wanted to give a full answer and explain everything, but in the circumstances contained himself with saying, "Yes, mother, yes, thank you. I am getting up now." The change in Gregor's voice probably could not be noticed outside through the wooden door, as his mother was satisfied with the explanation and shuffled away. But this short conversation made the other member of family aware that Gregor, against their expectation, was still at home. And soon his father came knocking at one of the side doors gently, but with his first. "Gregor, Gregor," he called. "What's wrong?" And after a short while he called again with a warning deepness in the voice. "Gregor, Gregor." At the other side door his sister came plaintively. "Gregor, aren't you well? Do you need anything?" Gregor answered to both sides. "I am ready now," making an effort to remove all the strangeness from his voice by enunciating very carefully and putting long pauses between each individual word. His father went back to his breakfast, but his sister whispered, Gregor, open the door. I beg of you. Gregor, however, had no thought of opening the door and instead congratulated himself for his cautious habit, acquired from his travelling of locking all doors at night even when he was at the home. The first thing he wanted to do was to get up in peace without being disturbed, to get dressed, and most of all to have his breakfast. Only then would he consider what to do next, and he was well aware that he would not bring his thoughts to any sensible conclusion by lying in the bed. He recommended that the had often felt a slight pain in bed, perhaps caused by lying awkwardly, but that had always turned out to be pure imagination, and he wondered how his imagining would slowly resolve themselves today. He did not have the slightest doubt that the change in his voice was nothing more than the first sign of a serious cold, which was an occupational hazard for driving salesmen. It was a simple matter to throw off the covers. He only had to blow himself up a little and they fell off by themselves. But it became difficult after that, especially as he was so exceptionally broad. He would have used his arms and his hands to push himself up, but instead of them, he only had all those little legs continuously moving in different directions, and which he was, moreover, unable to control. If he wanted to bend one of them, then that was the first one that would stretch itself out. And if he finally managed to do what he wanted with that leg, all the others seemed to be set free and would move about painfully. This is something that can't be done in bed, Gregor said to himself, so don't keep trying to do it. The first thing he wanted to do was get the lower part of his body out of the bed, but he had never seen this lower part and could not imagine what it looked like. It turned out to be too hard to move. It went so slowly and finally, almost in a frenzy, when he carelessly showed himself forward with all the force he would gathered. He chose the wrong direction, hit hard against and lower bedpost, and learned from the burning pain. He felt that the lower part of his body might well at present be the most sensitive. So then he tried to get up the top part of his body out of the bed first, carefully turning his head to be to the side. This is managed quite easily, and despite its breadth and its weight, the bulk of his body eventually followed slowly in the direction of the head. But when he had at last got his head out of the bed and into the fresh air, it occurred to him that if he let himself fall, it would be miracle if this herd were not injured. So he became afraid to carry on pushing himself forward the same way, and he could not knock himself out now at any price. Better to stay in bed than lose consciousness. This metamorphosis to be continued in next video.